Everyone hits a wall eventually, a rigid system or an immovable authority figure that leaves you feeling completely physically trapped. When you hit that wall, your ability to break out depends entirely on how you treat the raw material of your own mind. Think of it like a piece of steel. In demagnetized steel, the internal molecules are scattered completely at random, making the metal weak. But magnetizing it requires zero new material. It simply snaps those exact same molecules into a single unified direction. Suddenly, it becomes a powerhouse. The basic substance of a mind that achieves its goals and one that stays trapped is identical. The only difference is the internal arrangement. Let's look at how this plays out in a high-stakes scenario. The year is 1942. A man named Neville Goddard is 38 years old, and he's just been drafted into the U.S. Army. He is desperate to avoid this deployment because it means leaving his wife and his little girl behind in New York City. He does exactly what the rigid system demands of him. He follows proper military protocol and submits a formal application for an honorable discharge. The system responds exactly how you'd expect. His commanding colonel issues a hard rejection, stamping his paperwork disapproved. Goddard is now legally, physically stuck in a military camp in Louisiana. The colonel's stamp represents the end of the line. For a soldier in 1942, a rejected application is a closed door, leaving no further channel for a logical appeal within the military hierarchy. Goddard broke out of this trap by applying a psychological framework he called the perfect law of liberty. This law splits people into two categories. The first is the hearer. This is the person who looks around at their negative circumstances, wishes things were different, but ultimately accepts their physical limitations as permanent. The second type is the doer. A doer ignores their current physical environment and actively assumes the psychological state of the reality they actually want. Sitting in that camp, Goddard decided to stop being a hearer of his military rejection. He committed completely to becoming a doer. He understood that true psychological liberation means an absolute refusal to accept your physical restrictions as your final reality. To do this, he first had to block out the reality right in front of him. He was lying awake on an army cot in the middle of Louisiana, surrounded by dozens of other drafted soldiers in a cramped barracks. He closed his eyes and vividly transported his consciousness hundreds of miles away, back to his own New York City apartment. Goddard reached out and mentally touched the familiar grain of his own furniture. He listened for the specific rhythm of his wife's breathing in the next room, sustaining the sensory detail until the barracks faded and the apartment felt physically solid. He maintained this focus until 4 a.m. when his internal world shifted. A hand appeared in his mind's eye, physically scratching through the word disapproved on his discharge papers and writing approved in its place. Exactly 9 days later, the real world caught up to his mental state. Out of nowhere, the very same colonel called Goddard into his office, tore up the old rejection, and handed him an honorable discharge. He successfully overwrote a rigid, unyielding military bureaucracy through intense, sustained internal sensory experience. He never filed a single appeal or argued his case out loud. This exit from the Army wasn't a historical anomaly. Goddard viewed his experience as a repeatable process for changing any life circumstance. This sequence chart shows exactly how to execute it. Steps 1 and 2 are your foundation. First, you must clarify your specific desire, dropping any vague wishes. Then, you construct a short, simple mental scene that implies your goal is already fully complete. Step 3 requires you to mentally step inside that scene. You move past simply watching it and focus on the natural sensory feeling of actually being there. And then you reach the final step. You must persevere. You hold on to this internal assumption, refusing to break your focus until the physical world inevitably reflects it. You cannot sit around waiting for external events to make you feel free. You must generate the sensory reality of freedom first, forcing the circumstances to bend to your new state. An ancient line from the book of Joel sums up the timing of this entire technique perfectly. Let the weak say, I am strong. You claim the state you want to embody in the present tense, right now. We all possess the exact same raw mental substance. A highly successful mind and a completely trapped mind are built from the exact same material. Knowing that you already have the raw material The only question left is how you're going to arrange it.